Relations between Washington, Beijing, and the North American allies of the United States have entered a new phase of tension. After Donald Trump announced the introduction of additional 100% tariffs on Chinese imports, from electronics to rare earth metals, the world froze in anticipation of retaliatory steps. But whereas earlier Beijing was effectively facing the pressure of the White House alone, the situation has now changed dramatically. According to authoritative sources from the Financial Times, Reuters, and Bloomberg, Canada and Mexico for the first time took a joint position, supporting China and condemning the actions of the Trump administration as economic aggression, undermining global stability. According to Politico, last week in Ottawa, a closed meeting took place between Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney and Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum, where a joint response to American protectionism was discussed. According to sources close to the Canadian cabinet, Carney stated directly that the era of Washington's unilateral decisions is coming to an end and the world trading system cannot depend on the campaign slogans of one man. Sheinbaum, in turn, emphasized that Mexico will not support American tariffs if they lead to the undermining of free market principles. Moreover, in the final statement with which both sides addressed the press, for the first time, a phrase was heard about the need for solidarity with those countries that have become victims of economic pressure. As The Economist notes, for North American diplomacy, this is an unprecedented event. According to the Chinese agency Xinhua, Beijing welcomed the step taken by Ottawa and Mexico City, considering it the beginning of a new era of multilateral cooperation against trade diktat. On the same day, the Ministries of Commerce of China, Canada, and Mexico held online consultations during which they discussed the possibility of coordinating retaliatory measures against the United States. Among the initiatives under consideration are the introduction of restrictions on the export of rare earth elements and the creation of a joint investment fund to support affected industries. According to Nikkei Asia, the main focus is on metals used in American microelectronics and the defense industry. Insiders close to diplomatic circles report that the meeting between Carney and Sheinbaum was not spontaneous. According to Reuters, as early as September, representatives of the three countries, China, Canada, and Mexico, held a series of ministerial-level consultations during which they discussed the idea of forming an economic resilience alliance, an informal coalition of states opposing American tariff pressure. One of the participants of the meeting stated that Washington had benefited from its position without consequences for too long, and now the bill has been presented. Meanwhile, irritation is growing in Washington itself. As the Wall Street Journal notes, several White House advisors described Canada's position as a stab in the back and accused Mexico of playing on Beijing's side. However, experts from the Financial Times point out that the economic logic of Carney and Sheinbaum's decisions is quite rational. Both countries depend on exports to the United States, but also see huge opportunities in the Chinese market, which remains a key driver of global trade growth. In Ottawa and Mexico City, rhetoric about diversifying partners is intensifying. According to CBC and El Universal, the governments of the two countries are already discussing the possibility of gradually redirecting part of their strategic export flows, from agricultural products to technologies to Asian markets. In Mexico, they are also considering joining the Asian lithium and rare earth supply project, which would give the country access to Chinese technological chains. A key element is the issue of rare earth elements, a strategic resource without which neither microchip production nor the development of green energy is possible. China, which controls more than 70% of global production, according to Bloomberg, intends to reduce exports to the United States by almost 1/3. If Canada and Mexico, which possess their own reserves of niobium, lanthanum, and neodymium, join this initiative, it will be a powerful blow to American industry. According to sources at the Brookings Institution, Washington did not expect that its closest neighbors might support Beijing, but that is exactly what is happening. The Guardian writes that behind the scenes, the diplomatic corps of the European Union is also actively involved. Brussels, observing the formation of the new trio, cautiously expresses sympathy for the idea of collective resistance to economic blackmail, although officially, the EU maintains neutrality. Analysts note that Canada and Mexico are in fact acting for the first time not as regional partners of the United States, but as independent global players. Within the United States, the reaction to what is happening is mixed. American corporations, according to CNBC, are already warning the White House of the risks. General Motors, Boeing, and Tesla have sent letters to the administration pointing out that a tariff war with China, Canada, and Mexico could lead to a chain reaction of disruptions and a sharp increase in production costs. But according to Politico sources, Trump remains adamant. He sees the actions of his allies as a betrayal of America's interests and threatens retaliatory measures, up to and including revising the USMCA agreements. Meanwhile, behind the scenes of the World Trade Organization, a joint statement is being prepared by Canada, Mexico, and China, condemning unilateral protectionism and confirming their readiness for balanced retaliatory steps. According to insiders, the text of the document has already been agreed at the ministerial level, and its publication is expected in the coming days. If this step takes place, it will be the first official case of two closest U.S. allies openly supporting China in a trade conflict. As The Economist notes, what is happening could become a turning point for the entire global trading system. Canada and Mexico, which for decades have been tied to the U.S. economy, are effectively betting on multilateralism and moving away from American dominance. This is not just a diplomatic démarche, the publication writes. It is a statement of a new world order in which Washington no longer dictates the rules alone. Goldman Sachs analysts note that for the first time in the past 10 years, it is Canada and Mexico, traditional quiet U.S. partners, that have become a source of geoeconomic turbulence rather than Europe or Asia. At the same time, according to the South China Morning Post, Beijing has proposed to Ottawa and Mexico City to expand the scope of cooperation to include coordination in energy and agriculture. Chinese state-owned companies, including China National Offshore Oil Corporation and China Minmetals, have already submitted proposals for strategic investments in Canadian lithium and nickel production, as well as infrastructure projects in Mexico. Diplomatic circles do not rule out that this could lead to the creation of an alternative economic axis capable of gradually undermining U.S. monopoly influence on the North American continent. Meanwhile, disagreements are growing in the U.S. Congress. According to the Washington Post, some Republican senators are calling for an immediate review of trade agreements with Ottawa and Mexico City, while Democrats warn that Trump's aggressive tariff policy is undermining a system of alliances built over decades. A former U.S. diplomat told NPR, if Canada and Mexico are indeed coordinating with China, it marks the end of the era of American exceptionalism in the Western Hemisphere. In the coming weeks, Beijing is preparing retaliatory tariffs against the United States, while Canada and Mexico are planning their own coordinated measures. Market turbulence and rising tensions in North America are expected, but one thing is already clear. The old model in which America decides and others follow is rapidly disappearing, and for the first time in decades, the United States' North American neighbors have decided to stand not beside Washington, but opposite it.